About 1850 years ago, the most powerful man in the world retired to his campaign tent every evening and wrote notes in a journal he believed no one would ever read. Outside, there was war, a plague tearing through his empire, and rumors of betrayal. But the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius was not, in that journal, commanding armies. He was trying to command his own mind. That journal survives today, and it is called Meditations. Notes never meant for publication have become one of the most widely read books in the world. So what is in an emperor's private notes to himself that still draws readers back after all these centuries? Let me tell you the story. First, let us meet the author. Marcus Aurelius was born in the year 121 in Rome. He came from a noble family, but he was not the natural heir to the throne. What changed his fate was the interest the reigning emperor, Hadrian, took in him. Hadrian nicknamed this serious, honest boy Verissimus, meaning the most truthful one. Before his death, Hadrian chose Antoninus Pius as his successor, but on one condition, that Antoninus in turn adopt young Marcus. And so, at 17, Marcus set out on the path to the throne and spent roughly 23 years being prepared for it, studying rhetoric and law under the finest tutors. The turning point of his life came when his tutor, Junius Rusticus, gave him a book, a text containing the teachings of the philosopher Epictetus, a former slave. Through this book, Marcus discovered Stoic philosophy, and he never let it go. During these same years, he also corresponded with another tutor, Fronto, and some of these letters survive today. In them, we see not the future emperor, but an ordinary young man fondly teasing his teacher and complaining about sleepless nights. In the year 161, at 40, he became emperor, and for the first time in Roman history, he took a co-emperor, his adoptive brother Lucius Verus, to rule alongside him. Nearly the whole of his reign unfolded as one disaster after another. War broke out with Parthia in the east, and the returning army brought back with it a devastating plague that history would remember as the Antonine Plague. In the north, Germanic tribes began pressing against the Danube frontier, and Marcus spent most of the last decade of his life largely in military camps. On top of all this, one of his most trusted generals declared himself emperor and rebelled, and Marcus buried most of his own children while they were still young. Meditations was written in the middle of exactly this kind of life, not in a comfortable palace room, but in a war camp. So what is actually inside this journal? Meditations consists of 12 books, but it tells no story. It is made of short notes, reminders to himself, sometimes single-sentence warnings. Marcus gave these notes a Greek title, meaning to himself. Interestingly, though he was a Roman emperor whose native tongue was Latin, he kept his journal in Greek, the language of philosophy. We can summarize the heart of the book's ideas under a few headings. First, separate what you can control from what you cannot. According to Marcus, what wears us down is not events themselves, but our judgments about them. We cannot choose the weather, other people's behavior, or the twists of fortune, but we can always choose our response to them. One of the journal's most famous lines states that the soul takes on the color of its thoughts, meaning whatever fills your mind is what your life becomes. Second, keep your expectations of people realistic, but never give up on people. One of the book's most striking passages opens with a morning warning to himself. "Today I shall meet meddlers, ingrates, and the arrogant," Marcus writes, but he immediately adds that people are made to work together, and that anger at them goes against nature. Third, the idea that an obstacle can become the way forward itself. What blocks an action can be turned into what advances it. That single idea alone has inspired an entire modern movement of self-improvement writing. Fourth, remember death, not to frighten yourself, but to wake yourself up. Marcus reminds himself on nearly every page how short life is, and writes that the only thing we truly possess is the present moment. One of the book's most endearing scenes describes the emperor struggling to get out of bed in the morning. One side of him says it is warm under the blanket, and the other answers, "Were you born to fulfill your duty as a human being, or to enjoy comfort under a blanket?" About 2,000 years ago, the most powerful man on earth also could not get out of bed some mornings and wrote himself a passage to talk himself into it. This book is not the sermon of a flawless sage. It is the diary of a man fighting his own flaws, and that is exactly where its power comes from. And there is one more idea, perhaps the one that feels most familiar to people today. Marcus writes that people seek out retreats for themselves, country houses, seashores, mountains, yet there is no more peaceful, more untroubled retreat than within one's own mind, and the chance to withdraw into one's own soul is available at any moment. That idea, the notion that peace should be sought within rather than without, shows up everywhere today, from breathing exercises to meditation apps, and it stands here in this journal in its fullest clarity. What keeps meditations alive today is precisely that honesty. Marcus was not writing a book, he was training himself. He was not trying to teach anyone else. The roots of the cognitive behavioral approach used in psychotherapy today trace directly back to the Stoics. Notes written in a war tent 2,000 years ago still echo in today's therapy rooms. The book shows how fragile, how human, even a man at the very height of power can be. And perhaps that is exactly why, after all these centuries, readers still find themselves in these pages. Its power comes from never preaching, only from honestly showing one man's struggle with himself. So how did this journal reach us?
Marcus died in the year 180 during his campaign on the Danube front, and what happened to his journal after his death remains largely unknown for centuries afterward. Today's text rests almost entirely on two manuscripts. One sits in the Vatican Library in a badly damaged state, and the other has vanished entirely, though it reached a printing press before it disappeared. The book was first printed only around 1558, roughly 1,400 years after it was written, in Zurich. The translations we read today are themselves based on the ancient Greek text in which the book was originally composed. Wen Jiabao, the former premier of China, once said he had read the book more than 100 times. Countless people, from American presidents to business leaders, name it among the books they return to most. And if Marcus's face looks familiar, there is a reason. The wise old emperor in the year 2000 film Gladiator is this very man, though the scene where he is murdered by his own son is fiction, since in reality Marcus most likely died of illness. Still, the film gets one thing right. His son, who succeeded him, ruled as his father's exact opposite, and Rome's golden age truly did end along with its philosopher-emperor. Marcus is counted among the very few rulers in history who both genuinely governed and took philosophy seriously. He may be the closest history ever came to Plato's centuries-old dream of the philosopher king. A notebook written for no one to read, becoming part of humanity's shared inheritance, that is perhaps what people mean by the irony of fate. We have covered meditations, but this book was never really meant to be summarized. It was meant to be absorbed slowly, in small doses, again and again. Marcus himself did not write it in one sitting. One note each evening, one reminder each morning. If you would like to hear the complete book as an audiobook, you will find the link in the description. Subscribe for more books in this series. Until the next one, remember what Marcus wrote in his own journal. Stand up straight, or be held straight.